It's just the honest answer on atheism. No one's life has any value on atheism. Literally nothing matters. You can do whatever, and it wouldn't matter if atheism is true. But atheism isn't true.
Kyle, atheism is just a word. How can a word not be true?
Dumbass.
Even the word false is true if you want to get down to it. But for atheism not to be true, it would first need to be what it isn't, a belief system. But as I've said, it's actually a noun used to describe a person who doesn't believe in God or gods. Are there any other nouns you think just aren't true, or is it only atheism?
Another random YouTube British atheist attempting to debunk Kyle. Sorry chap, many have tried, literally every single one has failed, and you are no different.
Chap? Well, okay then, I'll be a chap just for this video, and I think you'll find that I wasn't trying to debunk anything, young Kyle. And the reason I kept saying that there is no evidence for God is, and I will choose my words very carefully here, because there isn't any. But maybe this video will prove me wrong, so let's take a look, shall we? Please subscribe.
As we're going to see in the video, he just keeps asserting, there's no evidence, there's no evidence. He's going to brush past all the points, and he's not going to have the self-awareness, because even if there was evidence, he wouldn't believe.
How rude! I didn't brush past anything. I just cut out some of the parts that I found boring.
Like I said, he literally admits this word for word in the video. Even if all the evidence showed, he still would not believe.
Now, far be it from me to correct somebody.
Well, ha ha ha.
But that isn't actually what I said, is it? And I hope you're not trying to misrepresent me, chap. Do Americans actually think we go around all day calling people chap?
Hello, old chap.
Anyway, I digress. But because you seem to enjoy it so much, let me clear it up for you. What I was trying to point out is that even if you turned up at my front door hand in hand with God, I still wouldn't want anything to do with him. He's a little too, what's the word I'm looking for? He's a little too, he's a little too murdery for my tastes. Whether God is real or not, I still wouldn't want anything to do with him. He sounds like a bit of a psycho to me.
You thinking God is mean, therefore no God, is not an argument.
I completely agree, which is why it isn't my argument. It isn't the fact that I don't like God that makes me not believe in him. It's the fact that in spite of everything you go on to say in this video, you still haven't offered any evidence that would make me or any other atheist think, maybe I'm wrong, maybe God is real.
To give some context, I made this video a few months ago called Your Brain on Atheism, showing what atheism does to a person, showing what it did to the amazing atheist, what a decade of atheism did to him. It has led him to nihilism, to wearing all this makeup. He's going through something.
Right, was that okay for you, Kyle? I didn't cut it out this time, and the reason I chose to leave it out last time is because it is one of the most ridiculous things I've heard in a long time, and I make videos about flat earthers, mate. Now, I don't know either of these people, so I can only use myself as an example here, but I would be willing to bet that being an atheist has nothing at all to do with the way these creators look or behave. Can I say that for certain? No, of course I can't. But that's the difference between me and you, Kyle. You asserted that they are the way they are because they don't believe in God, which is completely insane.
And this is relevant because I used to be an atheist and I used to watch him 10 years ago, and I can see where it's led him versus I, atheist who became Christian, has led me on a completely different path. We can see the fruits of atheism, of your brain on atheism. It does not lead you to more logical thinking.
Right. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about what you just said, because it would seem that you were asserting that if somebody doesn't believe in God, then it would somehow have an impact on their mental capacity. Is that fair to say? Because that's what it sounded like you were saying. So let me ask you this. What about the people who don't believe in the Easter Bunny? Does the same apply to them? Or maybe Santa Claus or unicorns?
Oh, unicorn!
What about leprechauns? Does believing in any of those things have an impact on the way a person thinks, looks, or appears? And the reason I ask that is because as far as I'm aware, the evidence for each of those things is just as hard to find as the evidence that proves God exists.
It does not lead you to truth or happiness. It doesn't lead you to anything. It leads you to this. That was the point of my original video, and I showed this at the start of that video. And this YouTuber, Creaky, He didn't even include that part. That was the entire purpose of making the video, is showing your brain on atheism, is the fruits of atheism.
I cut out 80% of your video. And I'm a commentary channel, Kyle. Do you really think my audience wants to watch an entire video from you? Well, sorry, pal. I'm not on YouTube to host other creators' videos. I'm here to look at the parts of videos I want to respond to, and that's what I do. I really don't see the objection.
But instead, he just clipped certain parts of the video in response to those. The parts he cut out were highly relevant. I was showing that atheism leads to nihilism.
See? I didn't cut that out, even though I just explained it myself anyway. No, you didn't. All you did was show a picture of an atheist wearing makeup, and sorry, pal, but the only thing that proves is that that particular atheist likes to wear makeup.
And if you're an atheist and you don't believe that, you're just lying to yourself. It's just coping if you don't acknowledge that fact. And I was showing what it has done to the amazing atheist.
Atheists are lying to themselves. Yeah, no, that's funny, Kyle. Fair play to you.
Haha, very funny.
But what it also is hugely ironic. Coming from a guy who believes that there's a man in the clouds watching over us all. What, all 8 billion of us? Even the ones like me who don't believe he exists?
But instead, he makes it as I was making a bad argument for God. He didn't even understand the point of the video. The video just shows where atheism led the amazing atheist. It did not lead him somewhere
amazing. It led him somewhere terrible.
And that is happening on the individual level with individual atheists, and we're seeing this on the societal level, is our society is going down the wrong path.
Now that's an interesting point, Kyle. And so that I don't get accused of cherry-picking the parts I want to respond to from your videos, let's talk some more about society, shall we? And the impact believing in God can have on society. So there's intolerance. And we all know what that looks like, don't we, Kyle? Don't think I need to explain that one to you. And then there's conflict. History shows that religious beliefs have fueled conflicts and violence many, many times. And then we've got suppression. Belief in God can lead to suppression of scientific understanding or personal freedoms, especially in rigid religious frameworks. A good example would be the people who are stupid enough to believe that God created everything 6,000 years ago. And then my personal favorite, financial exploitation. Some people fall prey to financial exploitation by unscrupulous religious leaders. Now, I know you didn't exactly provide us with a list of the harm that atheism can cause, but I just wanted to make sure you're happy with my responses, Kyle.
And in passing, the amazing atheist says there's no evidence of God, and I say, oh, there's historical evidence, there's philosophical arguments, there's all this evidence of different ways people go about proving God.
Okay, so arguments for God are not evidence for God, and neither is philosophy. At its core, all philosophy is like a big conversation about the big questions. It's like when you wonder about things like what makes something right or wrong, or what makes me me. People share their thoughts and ideas just like sharing different pieces in a big puzzle. And in philosophy, you can assert or propose ideas, yes, but the key is to be able to back them up with logical reasoning or evidence. So I'll ask you again, Kyle, without referring to philosophy, because as we just established, even a philosophical argument needs to be backed up by logic and evidence. Philosophical arguments for God's existence have been discussed and debated for centuries, and their validity often depends on individual interpretation and the philosophical frameworks one adheres to. And I know you like to keep bringing up logic, so what possible logic is there that leads you to believe in something that nobody has ever seen, nobody's ever interacted with? Jesus, at this point, I would accept if somebody said they'd heard God, providing they can prove it, of course.
This Creaky guy just says, no evidence, no evidence. I have an entire playlist refuting atheism, showing all of the evidence.
So, like I said in the first video I made about you, what evidence? Now, I have actually watched a lot of your content, and unless I'm missing something, your only evidence for God involves you waffling on about philosophy, which, as I just said, is not evidence. It's a discussion about whether God exists or not. Now, you can spin it any way you like, Kyle, but until you can provide evidence, then I will continue to not believe in God. And if, by some miracle, you can suddenly produce concrete evidence for God's existence, like I've already said lots of times before, I still wouldn't want anything to do with him, or from him for that matter.
There are lots of great in-depth videos and papers that I will have linked below if that is what you were looking for. That was not the focus of that other video. It was literally in the title, and it's so sad because this Creaky guy does not understand that, and somehow this guy has a massive following. I don't know how. I think it proves that we live in a fallen world, that someone who has the humor of literally a 15-year-old, like so many people are watching this, it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, Kyle.
Oh, Kyle!
That's so nice of you to say. And I've got to be honest here, I do sometimes worry that my humour is a touch on the childish side. But thanks for making me feel better about myself. I'll take it on board and try to do better in the future. And as far as my following, mate, I'm just getting into my stride. Please subscribe. And it would seem that there are just over 77,000 people who do not share your opinion of me. Not that I care one way or the other. I've been called a lot worse by a lot more people than you. So let's leave the straw man in out of it, shall we? And I'm only thinking of you. I wouldn't want people thinking that you can't actually refute anything an old idiot from Wales like me says without resorting to personal attacks.
Like, my memes are funnier, we have the truth on our side, and you can join us. You can follow Jesus Christ.
Creaky, you just made biggest mistake. Now it's Kylan time.
What? Huh? Sorry, pal, you've lost me now. I always thought that word was meme, and I never really understood what a meme was anyway. Maybe I'm just a bit too old for this internet stuff. Do you want to see something big and floppy? I've got a new hat. What did you think I meant?
Are you 14 years old? You actually thought that was funny? I was making those jokes when I was in middle school, when I was an atheist. You know, I've had all this progress in my philosophy, in my humor, but he's literally twice my age and he's still making these just the lowest tier jokes. I mean, most of my audience is in high school and they have way more sophisticated humor, way more sophisticated arguments, but you're literally a grown man
Making pee-pee jokes.
You're watching The Creaky Blinder.
Ooh, so I'm 14 now. What happened to 15 then? And I thought it was very funny, to be honest, but it doesn't matter what I think, clearly.
Don't do atheism. It is the most harmful thing you can do. As you can see, it's been very damaging to the amazing atheist.
What do you mean, don't do atheism? This is a stupid way to start off a video.
This guy has no self-awareness. I started the video in a stupid way. You literally just made a middle school boy joke to start your video, and you show my video, but you didn't even show the intro. You cut that out.
See, I didn't even cut out my own intro, and something tells me that Kyle has got a boner to pick with me. He seems to be getting very serious. And I would imagine your audience is full of children, man. My audience, on the other hand, well, I get actual grown-ups watching my content.
Why did you do that?
It's called being funny, pal. I'm thinking of starting a course if you're interested. That was the whole point of it. Say something stupid in response to something stupid. My word, I didn't think I'd ever have to explain this. How do you do an absence of belief in anything?
Let me explain for the slow boys in the audience. People say, don't do drugs. Okay, well, I'm just saying, don't do atheism.
By slow boys, I'm guessing you mean the people who watch me. That's strike two, Kyle. And your second personal attack. Naughty, naughty. And you and I both know what the Bible says about naughty boys, don't we, Kyle?
Naughty boy.
But thank you for the explanation. Now, to do drugs, don't you have to swallow or inject them? Now, I wasn't injected by atheism, and I certainly never have swallowed an atheist. No, stop it. I didn't mean it like that. I'm trying to keep Kyle happy. I'm trying to keep the penis joke short. Stop! Done. It's childish. Kyle said so.
It's very simple to understand.
I have no idea why people like you find this so difficult to understand, but all atheism is a lack of belief in God or gods. It doesn't take much effort to not believe in something. I mean, even I can do atheism.
I know you can do it. Atheists really aren't sending their best. Except they are. Creaky. You are the perfect example of what atheism does to one's brain.
Atheism?
I used to watch this guy when I was an atheist.
What? You used to be an atheist? What the hell happened?
I stopped using Reddit. I graduated high school. I realized they were trying to indoctrinate me into Darwinism, atheism, liberalism. So when I went to college, I started to actually think for myself, asking questions. Clearly, you never got past that middle school phase because you're still stuck in my middle school atheism and you still have the middle school level jokes.
Ooh, is that strike 3? Another personal attack? Now, just to be clear, this is what atheism is to me. Others may have a different opinion on what it is or isn't, but this is specific to me. The reason I'm an atheist, which incidentally I had never referred to myself as until I was on YouTube, but to me, all atheism represents is there being absolutely no evidence to support the existence of a god or gods. And as Friedrich Nietzsche said, faith means not wanting to know what is true.
Why would a Christian use an atheist nihilist definition of what faith is?
Right, now I get it, Kyle. So philosophy is amazing and the best way to prove God's existence until I cite a philosopher you don't like because he said something mean about God. Right, I understand now. Let's carry on. So what you're saying is that philosophy is good unless, of course, it disagrees with what you believe.
No one believes that definition of faith, not wanting to know what is true. Is that what the Bible teaches? No, the Bible literally talks about how Jesus is the truth. We need to seek the truth. If you looked at the history of Christianity, people learned more about the world through seeking truth because of their Christian presuppositions. So everything you're saying, just what are you talking about? This definition of faith, everyone has faith and trust in something, your wife loving you. Inductive reasoning, all these things, everyone has faith and no one believes that definition of faith.
Well, sorry, Kyle, but that sounds very much like you just not liking that definition, even though you constantly bang on about philosophy. You can't rely heavily on philosophical arguments and make the claim that those arguments are proof of God's existence, and then throw your toys out of your pram when I bring up a philosopher that disagrees with your position. That's called cherry picking, pal.
We're gonna watch his videos and see that he doesn't have any good arguments.
Well, there's a bit of luck. As you all know, I do love responding to responses.
It's complete nihilism because atheism, they can say it doesn't lead to nihilism, but it always does.
Right, think of atheism and nihilism as distant relatives in a big family of ideas. Atheism is like someone who says, I don't think there's a magical party planet in the sky, whilst nihilism is like the party pooper saying there's no party at all. Some people think if you start with atheism, you might end up at nihilism's gloomy get-together, especially when atheism questions certain big ideas usually talked about in religion.
Nihilism meaning life is meaningless. Nothing matters. Nothing you do matters. Why would it on atheism?
Okay, yeah, that's a fair question, so allow me to retort. You asked why anything would matter on atheism, so I will ask you why things wouldn't matter on atheism. You've never really made that clear.
Everything is random, there's no purpose, and they will lie to themselves and say, you can make up a meaning. Okay, you can just make stuff up. That's not being truthful. And that's why I made an entire video called How Atheists Lie to Themselves. Atheism always leads to nihilism. And if you don't admit that as an atheist, you're just lying to yourself.
Now look, Kyle, you're clearly an educated young man. I mean, you're not educated enough to see religion for what it is, but a smart kid like you should be able to see the irony in what you just said. Atheists are lying to themselves. Now, if that was an attempt at a joke, then nice job. But if you were actually being serious, then you really have a lot to learn about life. Let's imagine there are two people stood in a room. One of them is an atheist like me who thinks that life is what you make it. And then there's another guy in the same room making a claim that leprechauns are real. He's never seen a leprechaun. He's never seen any solid evidence that shows him leprechauns exist, but he still believes in leprechauns. So which of those people is lying to himself, Kyle?
Well, Kyle?
Why would anything that I do or you do matter? Why would our life have value? Why would your life have value? Whether you wake up in the morning or not. Why would anything matter? In the grand scheme of things, nothing matters.
Life has value and meaning in many ways beyond religion. One example is the impact we have on others in the world around us. My YouTube content creation, for instance, can inspire, it can educate and entertain people, make them laugh. Each positive influence I make adds meaning to my life and the lives of the people I reach through my videos. Building connections and relationships with others is a source of meaning in life. The bonds it creates, the love we share, and the support we provide to our friends gives our lives a profound value. Kyle, it's all about the connections you make that make the journey special, and the journey is life in case you've lost your place.
Oh, we can just make up our own meaning. We can be optimistic nihilists. Why? You're just lying to yourself. Atheism is the biggest cope. It is a dead end. There is nowhere to go. It is a defeater for ethics, for knowledge and logic. And when you realize that, there's nowhere to go on atheism. You can't justify any of your claims philosophically. You have no reason to believe in anything. You don't even have a reason to believe in yourself.
Okay, lots of words there, pal, but really only one part of that is relevant. What claims is atheism making? And I know you already know this, but atheism is nothing more than a lack of belief in God or gods. Because there's lots of them to choose from, let's not forget that. What claim exactly is it that you think atheism makes?
That's what atheism is. That is the only logical end of atheism, and most atheists will spend their life lying to themselves because they hold on to the Christian presuppositions because most of these atheists were raised Christians. They don't go all the way. Well, I wasn't raised Christian. I wasn't raised with anything. And so when my friend introduced atheism to me at a very young age, I took atheism to its logical conclusion.
So what you're saying then, Kyle, is that you have completely forgotten what atheism is. And I said in my first video about you what it is to me, so I'm not going to repeat myself. This video is going to be long enough already.
2,000 years later.
It seems, though, that whatever it is that people like you think atheism is, has been carefully constructed by people who are not atheists, to try and paint it as something which could be considered to be equivalent to a religion. Now, obviously, I can't speak for all atheists, but for me, atheism is simply a word that describes a person who doesn't believe in God. Like when an adult grows up and realizes that Santa Claus isn't real.
Is Santa Claus real?
Nobody calls them an a-Santa Clausist, do they? Because that would be an incredibly stupid thing to say.
Dumbass.
I was looking for truth. I was looking for something. But I was led to a dead end. And so when I started to look at other worldviews like Christianity, and when I became a Christian, it doesn't make any sense to be a halfway Christian. No, if you're going to be a Christian, if you're going to do anything in life, you should do it 100% and take us to its logical conclusion.
You know what, Kyle? I think that's the first thing you've said that I can actually agree with. And I don't know if you realize it, but what you just said shows us all that you really don't properly understand what being an atheist means. If you were trying to find meaning in atheism, then you're looking in the wrong place. And I know you'll take that completely out of context, so allow me to clarify it for you. You're treating atheism like you treat a religion, and they are two very different things, mate. I could give you a list of the things that give my life meaning. I'm not going to, because a lot of them are really nobody's business except my own. But yeah, stop treating atheism like it's some sort of organized religion. It's just a noun.
Because I've never seen any evidence for God, and neither has anyone else. If anyone had any good evidence for God...
Yeah, that pretty much nails it. The reason most atheists don't believe in God is because there is no evidence to support his existence.
You literally said in this video, even if God was real, you would not follow him. Atheism is not a logical problem. It is not a lack of facts and evidence. You have all the Messianic prophecies. You have the New Testament as the best recorded document in the ancient world, unless you're a history denier. Again, the long list of philosophical arguments, I guess you just deny all of those because, again, like you said, even if God is real, you're not going to follow him.
What on earth are you talking about? Using the Bible to prove that the Bible is factually accurate is really stupid. It's nothing more than a badly translated ancient text. And I'm sure I've already said this, but me saying that even if God was real, I wouldn't follow him means... well, it means exactly that. You seem to be trying to make a claim that somehow invalidates what I said. Come on, Kyle, pay attention. And you saying that I'm ignoring the long list of philosophical arguments is funny as hell. Because the one philosopher I did mention in my video, you immediately dismissed because you didn't like what he said about religion. Which is it, pal? Either philosophy is good and accurate or it isn't. Or are you just going to behave like every other theist I cover and cherry pick the parts of any argument that you think suits you? Now, I think I've said this in videos before, but I could be wrong. But I essentially just grew out of religion. I went to Catholic school, I took my first Holy Communion, I was confirmed, and even when I considered myself as a person who still believed in God, I always had doubts and questions. But if I had to pick a moment, it would be the moment that my youngest son was born with a rare genetic condition that has affected his entire life.
On a serious note, please pray for him and his son. Again, we don't have ill will. I'm just responding to these bad arguments.
Thank you, Kyle, for treating this part with such respect, and I do sincerely mean that. And the same goes for me. I haven't got any ill will towards theists. I just think it's funny the way they try to frame atheism as if it's some sort of religion.
And I'm sorry that happened. And lots of Christians, the earliest Christians, had very terrible lives, but they didn't think that somehow disproves God. And the fact that there's these sufferings in the world does not disprove God. God himself became incarnate in Christ and underwent all these same sufferings. He died for our sake. So that doesn't disprove God.
Hang on just a second. I didn't say it did. In fact, I don't think I even implied that the fact that my youngest son was born with a genetic condition disproves God. In fact, I said the opposite. That if God was real, then what sort of God is he? If he's meant to be all-powerful and loving, he would surely have the power to stop things like that from happening, wouldn't he? What sort of a God would do that to a newborn baby? And for what purpose? And whenever you ask a Christian like Kyle here why God would do that, all they ever really say is, oh, it must be part of God's plan.
All of the bad things in this world are a result of the fall. And the thing is, God has given us a free gift. You, your son, everyone watching this can have eternal life. We have that option. Do you want to follow Christ or not? It doesn't make any sense to say, oh, look at this evil thing, therefore there's no God. God has given you the greatest gift, eternal life. We are just facing the ramifications of sin in this world. But all of this is temporary. All this suffering is temporary. Like, think about it. When you go and run a mile, you feel really good after, but in that moment, it's going to feel like suffering. It may not make sense when you're doing the hard part, but after, you're like, I understand now. And so, again, back to faith and trusting in God. God underwent all these same sufferings.
Really? You just did it again. So you were saying that my son's condition is part of God's plan, but don't worry about it. I mean, Jesus went through some things as well. Now, it's funny that at the start of your video, you say that I missed the point of your video. Well, right back at you, Kyle. You definitely haven't seen the point in my video at all. And what you just said proves it 100%. So in a nutshell then, my son, who's now 20 years old, by the way, needs to go through his life just suffering, but it's fine because one day we'll all die anyway. Really? Well, in that case, whether God is real or not, I still wouldn't want anything to do with him. He sounds like a bit of a psycho to me.
Like I showed earlier, here is a part in context. It is not a logical problem for his atheism. He saw a bad thing happen, therefore no God. According to him, even if God was real, he wouldn't want to follow him. Atheism is not a logical problem. We have to ask ourselves, why are we entitled to anything in this life?
We aren't. Now, I know there are some people who think that they are, But nobody's entitled to anything. Now, if you really want to get into why parts of society are like they are, then that would be a much better focus for your attention than thinking you can debunk atheism.
We live in a very superficial society.
There are lots of people in the world now, especially the younger generation like Kyle here, who think that the world owes them something. And calm down, Kyle, I don't mean you. I was just saying that your generation are more prone to being entitled than people around my age. Everything I have achieved here on YouTube is because I work really hard to make the best content I can make. Everything I have got, I've gotten from the sweat of my own brow. Nobody owes me anything. Even the people that watch me, they watch me because they want to, not because they feel obliged to watch me.
I didn't do anything to deserve anything. Everything is a gift from God. So who am I to judge and say, God, this isn't fair, I deserve more? Everything is a gift. I've done nothing to deserve this.
Problem with these sporadic, really just out there in your face atheists, they say
There's no evidence for a God.
their idea of evidence is like, oh, I look at a microscope, I look at my test tube, oh, there is the God. Oh, I look in the telescope, there's an old man in the sky, there's a God. But again, this is a crackers in the pantry fallacy.
Crappers in the pantry fallacy was a little unhygienic to me. Hold on a sec.
I can't. This is literally so unfunny. Please, if you're watching this, Creaky, watch my videos if you actually want to learn how to be funny.
I do watch your videos, Kyle. And let me promise you one thing. They are not as funny as you seem to think they are. Now, when someone like me or Sir Sick makes a response to one of your videos, we make them funny for you. I will say one thing though, the fact that I'm a 50-year-old guy from Wales and you're an early 20s American kid may have something to do with it. I'm not really sure why you were so focused on whether I'm funny or not. It seems completely irrelevant to what we're talking about. And it screams, I don't know what to say to refute you, so I will focus on your funniness or lack thereof.
Because that was not funny at all.
The crackers in the pantry fallacy, that makes a lot more sense actually. But all that is a term used to critique the atheistic approach to discussing God's existence. And the analogy revolves around the idea of checking for a box of crackers in your pantry, which is a factual scenario that can be confirmed or denied through empirical evidence. But the fallacy argues that the question of God's existence isn't as straightforward as checking for crackers in your pantry, and necessitates a different kind of evidence or reasoning.
Yes, exactly. He's learning. He Googled that and actually explained it somewhat well. So
Yeah, none taken, Kyle. I didn't need to Google that one, actually. I am familiar with the crackers in the pantry fallacy. Hang on a second. Saying I Googled it, was that to imply that I don't know stuff?
the crackers in the pantry fallacy, not everything is proven in the same way. You're not going to prove logic the same way you do gravity. You're not going to prove the uniformity of nature the same way you do something in physics. You're not going to prove ethics in your test tube. There are things that have different ways of proving them. They have different forms of evidence, and these very fundamental things are not justified with empiricism, with the scientific method. The scientific method itself presupposes certain things. So when you go and you do science, you're trying to look for repeatability, you're assuming, again, the uniformity of nature, identity over time, the law of non-contradiction, inductive reasoning, that the future will be like the past. None of these are justified in the scientific method. They have to be assumed for the possibility of doing science. Philosophy is essential to understanding reality.
Unless, of course, the philosopher was Friedrich Nietzsche. But, again, I agree. Different things are proven in different ways. So with that in mind, why is it in 2023 nobody's been able to provide any evidence that God exists? Can't you even see the flaws in your own logic, Kyle? The Bible says it's the word of God, therefore God exists. Well, the Harry Potter books say that he was a wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry.
What is there? Metaphysics. What should we do? Ethics. How do we justify our beliefs? How do we know anything? That is epistemology. And there's different theories of how we have knowledge. There's classical foundationalism, there's coherentism, there's all these different theories because we all have presuppositions. We all at a fundamental level have things that we have to assume it's a circular reasoning. Let me give you an example. Logic. You cannot argue against logic, because in arguing against logic, you are presupposing logic. So it's a defeater if you deny logic. This is transcendental argumentation. So what I was alluding to in the video was a transcendental argument of God, who has been articulated by Jay Dyer, David Patrick Harry. You can watch their videos. You can read the Russ Mannion paper if that's what you're looking for.
But what type of evidence or reasoning do you mean? Either there is a God or there isn't. And I think we all know my thoughts on that. And I would be willing to bet my ball bag that the other type
You are literally a child.
of evidence and reasoning that Kyle is referring to revolves around saying that the Bible says God's real, so therefore he must speak.
So I just explained an intro to one of the many philosophical arguments for God. Now him talking about the Bible, he has done nothing in this video to showing why we shouldn't trust the Bible. You need to show why we shouldn't.
You're quite right, Kyle. My video didn't show any reason for not trusting the Bible, but that's because I am of the opinion that it's for the individual to decide by themselves. And I've said this so many times, I don't care if somebody believes in God. All I'm trying to get across is that I can see huge problems when you get people like, I don't know, Kent Hovind, for example, trying to convince people that the universe is only 6,000 years old and that God did it. Which, and let's be brutally honest here, is nothing more than a bold-faced lie. And I don't really want to get into creationism here because that's a topic all by itself. You are a creationist though, aren't you, Kyle, if my old man memory serves me well? Anyway, what's next?
By our standards, the New Testament is one of the best recorded documents from the ancient world. Unless you're a history denier and you're skeptical of all of history, but he hasn't given us any reasons of why we shouldn't trust the Bible. If I'm going to prove Plato existed and I show you a writing from Plato and he says, you can't use Plato's writings to prove Plato. Well, if Plato was real, then we would use his writings. This doesn't make any sense.
So in fact, it isn't evidence or reasoning at all, Kyle, is it?
Not everything is proven in the same way. Do you prove logic the same way you do a scientific study? Do you prove ethics the same way? No.
I actually agree with you, pal. Not everything is proven in the same way, but unfortunately, there are some things that simply cannot be proven.
He just said there are certain things that cannot be proven. How does he know that? Does he just think that, or does he actually know that? Can he justify that? Again, this all goes back to epistemology.
Well, no, I don't know for certain, obviously, because only an idiot would put a definitive on something that they were unsure of. And when it comes to God, I am not saying that he definitely doesn't exist, because as you quite rightly just said, how can I be sure? All I am saying in this and every other video I've made on this topic is that using the Bible to prove the Bible's accuracy is really stupid and the very definition of a circular argument.
Come on, like if you're an atheist, is this really satisfying to just hear this guy make these blind assertions? So right here, two epistemology textbooks, if you actually want to learn the basic of the theories of knowledge. This is a great introductory book, and this is a great one too. Like if you actually want to learn about these things, this guy is selling you short. He's a snake oil salesman.
Brilliant. Yeah, says the kid who thinks he's debunking something that isn't what he claims it to be in the first place. And what exactly am I selling, Kyle? Oh yeah, don't forget everyone, if you want to support what I do here on YouTube, you can head over to creakyblinder.com and pick up some Creaky Blinder merchandise. And Kyle, in case you're not sure, that was a joke as well. You know, you said I was a snake oil salesman, so I thought it would be funny to put a call to action right after you said that. And that's one of the many ways adults write jokes.
He doesn't care about truth, he's just making an assertion. This is literally like the lowest tier of atheism, and if he's watching this video, get those books. I guarantee you'll learn something.
Because whether you choose to admit it or not, there just isn't any evidence that shows us that there is a God sat up there on his cloud, watching and judging every single person on the face of the earth.
Ah yes, the Sky Daddy. This is a top tier atheist apologetics. And what he just said, that there's no evidence, the Bible is evidence.
What? And there we go. Now, in reality, there is absolutely no need to go any further into Kyle's video, because the second somebody cites the Bible as evidence for God, you know they have nothing more of value to add. But I am a man of my word, and I made you a promise, Kyle, that I wouldn't skip any parts of your video. So, can I ask a favor of you? If, and I'm sure you will reply to this video, but if you do decide to reply to this video, can you please make it a bit shorter?
You may not think it's good evidence, you may have reasons to doubt the Bible, but to say that there's no evidence, that's just not true. Like, at least say, oh, I don't believe in the Bible because of this. You're saying that there's no evidence. The Bible is evidence. The history of Christians is evidence. The philosophical arguments are evidence. All these things are evidence.
Right, fine, okay, look, maybe this is my fault, but when I say there is no evidence in the Bible, what I mean is that there is no evidence for God. And I find it really insane when people say that the Bible proves God's existence because it's the word of God. And I'm just trying to be honest here. But when I say there's no evidence in the Bible, what I mean is there's no evidence for God.
You can't say there's no evidence. You have to actually dispute the evidence.
We can prove God very simply because of the historical record, revelation, and because there are philosophical arguments for the Trinity.
Seriously? So even though you can't prove God's existence...
So according to this guy, there's absolutely no evidence. I can't even prove God, but even if God was real, he wouldn't believe in him. Dude, you refuted yourself.
I didn't say that even if God was real, I wouldn't believe in him. I said even if God was proven to be real, I still wouldn't like him or follow him. Unless, of course, I misspoke, which I don't think I did. Stop misrepresenting what I said, Kyle. That's really poor arguing skills.
Like, have some self-awareness. How can anyone be satisfied by watching this guy? He's a walking contradiction.
I'm sure that was strike 4. Kyle, let's do an experiment, shall we? Just me and you. Okay, let me and Kyle know in the comments below this video why you watch a walking contradiction like me. And it's interesting that you bring up contradictions, Kyle. Do you want to talk about any of the many contradictions in the Bible? Or are we going to save that for another video? And for this example, we will say that God is a single entity. You're saying that your proof is a philosophical argument that posits a single God existing as 3 people, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Oh yeah, that makes it way more believable, Kai.
This guy is just a fallacy machine. You finding it hard to believe, not an argument. Fallacy of personal incredulity.
Philosophical arguments supporting this doctrine are rooted in both spiritual interpretation and philosophical reasoning. So in fact, what you just claimed as proof of God's existence isn't actually proof of anything at all.
What is he saying? I wish he would just take the time to hear himself speak. Not proof of anything at all. So if everyone's experiencing this spiritual phenomenon, then that's not proof of anything. That's not evidence of anything. Philosophical reasoning, that's not proof of anything. So what is this proof of anything? How do you prove anything on your worldview if you can't use philosophical reasoning to prove anything? Like, just listen to yourself. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, interesting. So what is my worldview then, Kyle? Because it isn't atheism. Atheism isn't a worldview. And I'll say it again for you, really slowly. All atheism is a lack of belief in God or gods. The only people who are claiming that atheism is a worldview are theists.
You know, he's making a logical argument. Where's the physical evidence for the logic? I thought you only believe in things if the pure research of the test tube can say it. But there's no physical evidence for logic, for ethics.
Logic is more about the rules of thinking clearly and making valid arguments than something physical we can see or touch. But we can see logic at work in the physical world around us, especially when we apply it to solve problems or understand how things work. When we solve math problems or create geometric shapes, we're using logic.
Do the particulars prove the universals? Does he believe in universals? He's bringing up particulars, all of these things. Oh, he's like, look at this. Okay, laws of logic, the laws of non-contradiction, the law of identity, all of these things that have to be assumed, that are necessary truths for our universe. How does logic exist on his worldview? Do you actually believe that it is real? Or is it a human construction? If there was no humans, would logic still exist? If there's no human minds, would logic still exist? Okay, if there's no human minds and logic would still exist, which it has to, because logic is required in every logically possible universe, then where does logic exist?
Dare I ask where the logic is in believing in God? I mean, you keep bringing up logic, but you seem to be lacking it yourself. And you keep mentioning my worldview. Well, you seem to think you know me so well, so tell me, what is my worldview then, Kyle? I mean, a smarty pants like you should have no problem identifying my worldview based on the things I've said in my videos.
Are numbers created? Are they real? Are they mind-dependent? Are they subjective? Or are they objective? All these questions cannot be answered on his absurd worldview.
The equations and shapes are physical representations of logical principles. Science uses logic to design experiments, make predictions, and interpret the result.
Like I said at the start of the video, science cannot be your only epistemology, because prior to doing the scientific method, you have certain presuppositions. You cannot prove the presuppositions using the scientific method. You cannot prove the uniformity of nature, inductive reasoning, the law of identity, all these very crucial things. And in the history of skepticism, you run into all these problems with empiricism, the myth of the given, all of these things. Science does not give you truth.
Excuse me now? Science does not give you truth? What a stupid thing to say. But anyway, let's focus on presuppositions for a second. Why is it that you're so confident that God is real? Is it because you've seen evidence that proves to you he's real? Or because you knew that the Bible allegedly proves God's existence, so when you started reading the Bible, you did so with the presupposition that God is real? So the Bible didn't need to prove anything to you because you'd already decided that? And reading the Bible just backed up what you would presuppose. The data and observations they collect are physical evidence that can support or challenge logical theories. When we troubleshoot issues with our car or fix a leaky tap in the kitchen, we use logic to figure out what's wrong and how to fix it.
So what would it take for you to believe in God? See, it's not a problem of lack of facts and evidence. It's that you don't like the God that has revealed himself. He revealed himself through history.
Now, with the risk of asking a stupid question, are you going to actually show us any of this evidence in your video?
Here's a tip, big life hack. If you're going to respond to one of my videos, read the title of the video. The video was called Your Brain on Atheism, and I explained all this earlier in this video. And in the video, I mentioned in passing, there's evidence for God. I even showed it on screen. I showed an image. He doesn't even address the image. So, the New Testament, you say there's no evidence. The New Testament is evidence. You can say it's bad evidence, but to say there's no evidence is just not true. Please address that claim.
Okay, fine. So what exactly is the New Testament evidence of? Now, is it that someone at some point in history wrote some stories and then they got put into the most misleading book in the history of humanity? Well, if it's that, then yes, I would agree with you. But once again, using the Bible to prove the validity of the Bible is a circular argument, which is pretty standard for theists. They don't have any other kind of argument, because outside of the Bible, there is nothing that even comes close to proof of God's existence, and the Bible doesn't prove it either.
I have a full playlist on my channel for atheists. There's many ways to reach out to me if you have questions.
In your video, or are you just going to do what most apologists do and tell us to read the Bible, which I have many times?
So what are your thoughts on the Bible? There's lots of books on the reliability of the Gospels, but I really don't think you care, because you already admitted even if God was real, you wouldn't follow him because you think he's mean. So it doesn't really matter what I bring up.
Now you're getting it, Kyle. You're right.
You're goddamn right.
It really doesn't matter what you bring up, unless, of course, it's a way of proving God without even thinking about the word Bible, let alone opening one, or saying something like, see, it says right here in the Bible that God is real.
Yeah. Like that's ever gonna happen. What a load.
How would you like God to tell everyone he exists? He has to reveal himself in history. I mean, it's pretty simple. What would need to be true for you to believe in God? How would God need to convey his message for you to believe in God?
That's actually a really good question, Kyle. And I'll be completely honest with you here and say I've never actually thought about it. But if there is an all-powerful God who loves us, I would expect there to be no suffering in the world, no kids born with disability, no wars, no famine. Can you see where I'm going with this? If there is a God, then he must be pretty sick and twisted, given the number of tragedies we see on a daily basis.
So did you hear what he said? He did not bring up evidence that I can show to prove that God exists. He says that he would expect the world to be different. So I can't bring up evidence to prove God to him because he has certain beliefs of how the world would look if God was real. So the problem is not evidence for God. The problem is he does not like the God that is real. This is why I always say atheism is not a logical problem. It is a spiritual problem. He has certain expectations. God doesn't meet his expectations. Therefore, he doesn't want to believe in God, even if it was real.
Scientific beliefs are supported by evidence and they get results. Myths and faiths are not and do not. Who said that then? I know I just did, but shut up. Just play along.
This is painful, but I want to respond to his full video because it's annoying when people clip up your videos. So I'm trying to watch his full things, but this is why I speed up some of my other videos because I don't want this video to be too long, but I want to respond to everything that he's saying.
Yeah, I know how you're feeling, pal. I've never done such a comprehensive response to anyone. I won't be doing it again either.
Kind of view things like science and philosophy and all that stuff as the sober man's take on life and where we came from and where we're going and why we're here and all that stuff.
Funny how you bring up philosophy, because all the pop atheists have no philosophical training. They do the most basic fallacies. They don't know basic meta-ethical critiques like the is-ought problem, yet they make normative statements about, oh, the good, the bad, progress, which is a complete contradiction. The good, the bad, there are no ethics on your atheist system.
Remember my community post from last week where I said I was fed up of constantly repeating myself? Well, this is one of those times. Atheists have no ethics or morals is just something apologists say to try and crap on atheism.
Hey, I'm going to steal your line and say there's no evidence and there's no good reason to believe in any ethics on an atheistic worldview. Nothing about the world tells you how it ought to be. He didn't address anything that I just said. The is-ought critique. Okay, there's things happening in the world.
So the is-ought problem is like saying just because the sky is blue, it doesn't automatically tell us how we should behave. In other words, facts about the world, you know, how things are, don't directly tell us what's right or wrong, or how things should be. And this is a big challenge for people who study what's good and bad, because it makes us wonder where our ideas about right and wrong come from. Some people think there are clear rules about what's right and wrong, while others think it's more about what different people believe. It's a bit like trying to figure out where the rules for a game come from. Are they set by someone, or do they just depend on what everyone playing the game agrees on? It's a tricky question in philosophy. So what the hell makes you think you've got all the answers, Kyle, is a complete mystery to me, because the way I'm understanding it, it does nothing to disprove anything I've said, but it also backs up nothing that you've said.
But nothing in the world can tell you how it ought to be from seeing certain things. You have presuppositions, and none of those can be justified on an atheistic worldview. But of course he isn't going to acknowledge this.
Let's say ethics is like a big rule book on how to be a good person and make the right choices. Now, if religion is like a teacher giving you a rule book, let's see what happens when the teacher isn't around.
That's exactly what happened in the Garden of Eden. I know better than God. You know, God commanded us to do certain things, but I can just make up my own rules. Great. That was the chief sin in the garden, was pride.
Let's say, for example, I was stood on the roof of a tall building with somebody I really didn't like, and I decided to push him off and he fell to the ground and died. Does that mean I did nothing wrong because I don't believe in God? Therefore have no ethics or morals? No, of course it doesn't, you clown.
I'm the clown. You have no self-awareness. You just made the claim that it is wrong. What is wrong? What is right? What is good? What is bad? These are all made up on atheism. They don't exist. That's skydaddyism. He doesn't give any evidence of why that's wrong.
This is literally like pissing into the wind. That's my point, Kyle. Most people, regardless of religious background, know that it's wrong to kill another human being by pushing them off a tall building. And you don't need God to tell you that's wrong. Look, I'm not sat here pretending to have all the answers to everything. You, on the other hand, well, that's exactly what you seem to be doing. But you seem to be saying that you do know what's good or what's bad because the Bible tells you what's good or bad, kind of like a rule book. But if the Bible does such a good job of telling theists what's good and what isn't, then why are there so many heinous things in the Bible like, I don't know, slavery, rape, murder? killing babies even.
What is wrong? Where's the wrong in the test tube? Show me. You said science can prove everything and everything else, you can't use philosophical reasoning. So what is wrong? Where's the scientific evidence for what is right, for what is wrong? Please explain.
Because we all have a sense of what is right or wrong, whether we believe in God or not.
That's your justification? We all have a feeling, Mr. Rational, logical. I just go off my feeling. Well, what happens if you feel that it's right? Does that make it right? What is wrong? You're going off feelings? You're using your atheist feelings as an argument? These blind chemicals in your brain? Really?
So he's talking about ethics. It's wrong to enforce your religion on other people.
If somebody wants to believe in God, then that's for them to decide. Nothing to do with me. But what gives an apologist the right to tell me that I should believe in their God? This is where the problem comes into play. As I said earlier on, before I got onto YouTube, I had never referred to myself as an atheist. But when I started hearing people like Kyle telling people like me that we were wrong for not believing in God, then that changed. The best way to get me to not do something is to tell me I have to do that thing. And that's what a lot of them are saying. Atheists are wrong simply by not believing in the Christian God. Well, it doesn't work like that.
It always comes back to their arbitrary atheist ethics. Why are you telling me what I should do? Because on Christianity, there is oughts. There's no
atheist ethics? I thought we couldn't have ethics or morals. Come on, Kyle, you can't have your cake and eat it now, can you?
Oughts on atheism. There is no justification for anything. We are giving you reasons to believe in God.
You can do what you want. He can do what he wants. No, but why? Why on atheism? What are these? What's wrong with imposing just an empty, meaningless universe? What's wrong with enforcing my religion by having basic liquor laws? What's so wrong with that?
Let me give you another example. If a gay man was trying to force you, Kyle, to attend a...
So he cuts on my original video so it doesn't even make any sense.
Whoa. Hold on a second now. Did you just cut out a part of my hilarious response to your video, young man? I thought we agreed we weren't going to do that. Oh, I'm fuming. This video script took me 2 days just to write. Then I had to record all this and edit it. And I am far too lazy to be doing actual work. But I will be true to my word and respond to every single second of your video. It's fine though. I'm not mad about it. I'm just disappointed in you, Kyle.
So the amazing atheist makes all these ethical claims. You can't force liquor laws on me. You can't do all of this. You can't force your religious values on me.
You try to impose even one moral on me based on your faith, then I will your shit up. I will not let you impose your religion on me. I will not have you come to me and say, oh, well, you can't buy liquor on Sunday because we're religious.
Force your religious values on me. And all I'm saying, why would that matter on atheism, Mr. Amazing Atheist? Why can't you force things that is ethical? There are no ethics on your system. You have offered no justification. And then this guy, Creaky, he offers this extreme example where what is happening, basically, that they're forcing this.
I'm wrong. Nothing mattered anyway. It's a big, empty, meaningless universe. Nothing mattered. If you're right, nothing matters.
Oh, fine then, because this is clearly a case of do as I say, not as I do, isn't it? But the point I was trying to make is, would a theist like Kyle be happy being forced to attend an LGBTQ event, even though he's a straight male Christian? And I don't really understand why he cut that part out. I mean, it couldn't possibly be because he couldn't think of a way to respond to what I was saying without coming across as a giant homophobe. But with that being said, Kyle may be gay himself. I have no way of knowing. And I definitely wouldn't feel the need to point out that quite often when I do come across somebody who's homophobic, then they are usually part of the God Squad. And before you blow a gasket, I know not all religious people are homophobic. Now then, I could be misunderstanding this. I don't think I am, but there's always a chance. So are you saying, Kyle, that your life only has meaning because you believe in God? And that if it was ever proven to you that God isn't real, then your life would no longer have any meaning? Well, it's a bit of a grim way of viewing your own existence, isn't it?
It's just the honest answer on atheism. No one's life has any value on atheism. Literally nothing matters. You can do whatever, and it wouldn't matter if atheism is true. But atheism isn't true.
Kyle, atheism is just a word. How can a word not be true?
Dumbass.
Even the word false is true if you want to get down to it. But for atheism not to be true, it would first need to be what it isn't, a belief system. But as I've said, it's actually a noun used to describe a person who doesn't believe in God or gods. Are there any other nouns you think just aren't true, or is it only atheism?
I was an honest atheist. I took atheism to its logical conclusion. Most atheists do not do that. That's why I made my video how atheists lie to themselves.
What about the other people in your life? You know, your family. Do they not add anything for you? Are you not fulfilled by anything other than the belief in God?
He keeps saying, there's no evidence, there's no evidence. Okay, then why do all these Christians believe Christianity? Are they just completely on faith? There's no evidence at all?
Well, as far as I can tell, yes.
No, obviously, very smart people believe Christianity because there is evidence.
So where is it then, Kyle? And more importantly, what is it? Do you not think if there was any solid evidence showing that your God was real, then somebody would have shared it by now?
What world is this guy living in where there's no evidence?
Hey guys, today we're gonna see if there's any evidence for God. Let's search evidence for God. Look it, there's all these videos. This is evidence. We can't say there's no evidence. We have to critique the evidence that is here, but it is a lie to say that there is no evidence. This literally took 5 seconds.
Oh, Kyle, I don't want to freak you out or anything, but most of those are what we call YouTube videos, mainly from people like you. I've spotted a couple in there that I've already responded to myself. So using that logic, does this mean that you think that what you do on YouTube is also evidence for God?
That's all we have is evidence. Now you can critique the evidence, but to say there's no evidence, that's just not honest. You can disagree with the evidence and you can say it doesn't make sense and you can critique the evidence, but to say there's no evidence, that's just not true.
You're no different to any other apologist I've ever run across, Kyle. You keep saying that there is evidence for God, but what you will never do is share that evidence. Because it's tricky to share something that doesn't exist, I know.
Thank you.
That's what we've all come to expect. Just another Christian apologist telling us what we should or shouldn't believe in and offering nothing while claiming to have plenty of evidence without showing us what any of that evidence is. Thank you all so much for watching.
The British government must be targeting me or something because all of these British YouTube atheists, they love to make videos on me.
Tell me you think you're very important without telling me you think you're very important. Oh yeah, that's it, Kyle. The British government told me to make this video about you, and it absolutely wasn't because your video came up in my suggested feed, and that I just watched it and thought that your so-called evidence for God was weak, to say the least. So you're sticking with God is real because the Bible or some random YouTube videos agree with your thoughts about whether God is real or not.
I responded, I've debunked them all. It's so sad. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. Pray for the guy. Thanks.
No thank you, Kyle, and like I said earlier, if you are going to respond again, can we please keep the videos under 15 minutes? I'm getting far too old and lazy to be putting this much effort into a YouTube video. Love you, bye.
Alright, watch this next. But before you do, make sure you subscribe by order of the Creaky Blinder.